So, you want to know what it's like to be at the absolute breaking point, pushed to the edge by someone who abuses their power, someone who takes away the one thing that brings joy to hundreds of kids, all because of their own petty insecurities? Let me tell you, it's a feeling of pure, unadulterated rage, mixed with a desperate need for justice. And when that person is a teacher, someone who is supposed to guide and nurture, but instead chooses to wield their authority like a weapon, it makes you question everything. I'm talking about the time my middle school, no, our middle school became a battlefield, and the casualty count was our beloved Roblox. Was I wrong for what I did to get it back? Tell me, honestly, would you have done the same thing if some mean teacher banned Roblox from your school, completely out of the blue, and thought they could get away with it? I'm still grappling with it even now. It all started subtly, like a virus slowly infecting a system. I was in 7th grade, and life was for the most part pretty good. School was school, homework was homework, and then there was Roblox. Roblox wasn't just a game for us, it was a universe. It was our social hub, our creative outlet, our escape from the mundane. We'd spend hours after school, weekends, even sneaking in a quick game during lunch breaks on our phones, exploring new worlds, building our own, and chatting with friends. It was the common language spoken by practically every kid in our grade, and a good chunk of the 8th graders too. My best friend Liam and I were particularly obsessed with a game called Adopt Me. And we'd built up quite the collection of pets and items. It was innocent fun and a fantastic way to unwind. Our teachers, for the most part, either ignored it or just saw it as harmless kid stuff. Some even used it as a reward system. Finish your work, and you can have 10 minutes of Roblox on the class computers. Those were the good old days. Then came Mrs. Albright. She was new to our school that year, a history teacher, and from the moment she walked into the staff room, there was an air about her that just felt off. She was a tall woman, with sharp features and a perpetually pursed lip that made her look like she'd just smelled something unpleasant. Her eyes, behind thick-rimmed glasses, had a way of scrutinizing everything and everyone. She seemed to dislike children, which, considering she was a middle school teacher, was a rather glaring flaw. She'd snap at kids for minor infractions, assign excessive homework, and generally had a reputation for being the strictest, most humorless teacher in the school. We all tried to avoid her class, but fate, in its cruel wisdom, decided I was to be one of her unfortunate students. Her history lessons were dry, delivered in a monotone voice, and devoid of any passion. She seemed to revel in the misery of her students, almost as if it fueled her. The first signs of her war on joy began with subtle comments. During a history lesson one day, while a few kids were discreetly trying to manage their Adopt Me farms under their desks, she stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes, darting across the room, landed on a kid named Noah, who had his phone slightly visible. She marched over to him, snatched the phone, and held it up, a triumphant smirk on her face. "Is this more important than the Battle of Hastings, Noah?" she sneered. Noah, a shy kid, turned beet red. "No, Mrs. Albright," he mumbled. "This Roblox nonsense," she continued, holding up the phone for all to see, "is a distraction. It's rotting your brains and turning you all into zombies. You should be focused on your studies, not on virtual pets." She confiscated his phone for the rest of the day, an unheard-of punishment for a first offense. This was the first shot fired. Over the next few weeks, her anti-Roblox rhetoric escalated. She'd make passive-aggressive comments in the hallways, during assemblies, even during parent-teacher conferences. "These children are addicted to these video games," she'd lament to parents. "They have no attention span, no appreciation for real history, real learning." Most parents, who probably just saw Roblox as another game their kids played, nodded politely, not understanding the depth of her vendetta. But we, the students, we understood. We felt the chill of her disapproval, the unspoken threat in her voice. It was like she genuinely resented the fact that we had something we enjoyed outside of her dreary classrooms. The final straw, the event that catapulted her from merely disliked to universally loathed, happened during a school-wide assembly. We were all crammed into the gymnasium, fidgeting in our seats, waiting for the principal to make some announcement about standardized testing. Suddenly, Mrs. Albright, who was standing at the back, marched to the microphone, her face a mask of stern determination. The principal, Mr. Henderson, looked surprised, but he let her speak. She cleared her throat, and her voice, amplified by the speakers, boomed through the gym. "Students," she began, her tone dripping with self-importance, "I have observed a grave issue plaguing our school. A pervasive, mind-numbing addiction that is hindering your academic progress and stifling your intellectual growth." A collective groan went through the student body, because we knew exactly what was coming. I am, of course, referring to Roblox. A ripple of murmurs and whispers swept through the gym. She paused, letting the dramatic effect sink in. "Effective immediately and with the full backing of the school board and Principal Henderson," she continued, her voice rising in pitch. "Roblox and all similar online gaming platforms are hereby banned from school grounds. This includes school computers, personal devices, and any other electronic equipment brought onto campus. Any student found playing Roblox will have their device confiscated for a full week and will face disciplinary action. This is for your own good. It is time to focus on what truly matters, your education." The gym erupted. Not in applause but in outrage. Kids were shouting, "What? That's not fair. You can't do that." Liam, next to me, looked like he'd been punched in the gut. My own stomach dropped. It was a complete shock. Principal Henderson, who had been standing beside her looking increasingly uncomfortable, stepped forward to try and calm the crowd, but the damage was done. The ban was enacted, just like that. Our collective joy, our digital haven, was snatched away from us by one bitter, power-hungry teacher. The school felt different after that. There was a palpable tension, a feeling of injustice hanging in the air. Lunch breaks were quieter, hallways felt emptier, and the usual buzz of kids sharing their latest Roblox adventures was gone, replaced by a sullen silence. Classes became even more unbearable. Mrs. Albright, now emboldened by her victory, seemed to expand her reign of terror. She'd walk the hallways during breaks, eagle-eyed, scanning for any hint of a phone or tablet. She even started giving pop quizzes on the most obscure historical facts, clearly trying to prove her point that without Roblox, we should magically become history prodigies. It was infuriating. The other teachers, while perhaps not agreeing with the ban entirely, were forced to enforce it. Our principal, Mr. Henderson, a kind but somewhat weak-willed man, clearly felt pressured by Mrs. Albright's forceful personality and her supposed school board backing, which we later found out was a complete exaggeration. She'd spun it as a major educational initiative, and he hadn't had the spine to stand up to her. Liam and I, along with many other kids, felt a deep sense of betrayal. It wasn't just about the game, it was about the principal. It was about an adult, a teacher, arbitrarily taking away something that meant so much to us, under the guise of education, when it was clearly just her personal vendetta. We tried reasoning with other teachers, writing letters to the principal, even getting a few parents to call the school, but it was like hitting a brick wall. Mrs. Albright's influence seemed to have permeated every level of the school administration. We felt powerless, angry, and utterly defeated. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I saw the sadness in my friend's eyes, the quiet rebellion in the way kids dragged their feet through the halls. I heard the whispered complaints, the frustrated sighs. And I knew deep down that we couldn't let her win. This wasn't just about Roblox anymore. It was about standing up to a bully who had crossed a line. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just given up and accepted the ban? Or would you have fought back, even if it meant risking everything? I decided I couldn't just stand by. Liam and I spent hours brainstorming. We considered petitions, peaceful protests, even a silent walkout, but we knew Mrs. Albright would crush any of those attempts. She thrived on direct confrontation, on squashing dissent. We needed something different, something that would hit her where it hurt, something that would expose her hypocrisy and her abuse of power, without directly breaking any school rules ourselves. That's when Liam, brilliant, mischievous Liam, remembered something I had forgotten. Mrs. Albright was notoriously bad with technology. She struggled with the smartboard, often called the IT department for minor issues, and once, she even printed an entire 20-page document in Comic Sans. And that's when the idea, a truly magnificent, devious idea, began to form. We started observing her patterns. Mrs. Albright was meticulous about her routines. Every morning, she'd arrive at school at exactly 7:30 a.m., go directly to her classroom, and open her computer. She'd then spend the first 15 minutes of her day preparing for her lessons, usually involving projecting some historical images or documents onto the smartboard. Her computer was connected to the school network, and she often left her email open. We also knew that the school Wi-Fi had certain parental control-like filters, designed to block inappropriate content and, ironically, certain gaming sites. But we also knew that sometimes these filters could be bypassed if one knew how. And Liam, with his uncanny knack for all things tech, had definitely figured out a few loopholes. Our plan was simple, yet audacious. We needed to make her look ridiculous, to expose her for the mean-spirited hypocrite she was, and we needed to do it in a way that couldn't be directly traced back to us. The opportunity presented itself during a school-wide Digital Citizenship Week, an initiative the school had been planning for months, long before the Roblox ban. Mrs. Albright, ever the eager beaver, had volunteered to give a presentation to the entire 8th grade class about responsible internet use and the dangers of online gaming addiction. This was our moment. The day of the presentation, the 8th graders were assembled in the auditorium. Mrs. Albright, dressed in her usual austere attire, stood confidently at the podium, a smug look on her face. Her laptop was hooked up to the main projector, displaying a title slide. The Pitfalls of Digital Distraction: Why Roblox and Similar Games Are Harmful. I was in the back pretending to take notes, while Liam, who had convinced a teacher he needed to fix a technical glitch with the sound system, was discreetly plugged into the main network hub, just behind the stage. She began her speech, her voice booming, reiterating all her usual anti-Roblox rhetoric. The 8th graders, many of whom were just as fed up as we were, fidgeted restlessly. Then, at a prearranged signal, a cough from me, Liam began his work. Mrs. Albright clicked to her next slide, which was supposed to show a chart about declining academic performance. Instead, the projector displayed a giant, pixelated image of a smiling noob, the default Roblox character, with the words "Roblox is awesome" emblazoned across the screen in bright, cheerful letters. A gasp went through the auditorium, followed by suppressed giggles. Mrs. Albright froze, her face turning a ghastly shade of white. She stammered, What is this? I didn't put this here." She frantically clicked to the next slide, hoping it was a fluke. But instead of her detailed bullet points, the screen now showed a montage of popular Roblox games. Adopt Me, pets dancing, Brookhaven avatars waving, and a giant piggy character chasing players. The background music, which only played for a few seconds before she managed to mute it, was the iconic Roblox "oof" sound effect, repeated several times. Panic began to set in on her face. She tried to close the presentation, but the mouse seemed to have a mind of its own. Suddenly, her open email inbox popped up on the screen, and before she could react, an email draft appeared, addressed to the entire staff. The subject line read, "Urgent, regarding the utter incompetence of my students and why Roblox is the root of all evil." The body of the email, displayed for everyone to see, was a long, rambling complaint about her students, filled with sarcastic remarks about their intelligence, their addiction, and how she was the only one brave enough to save them from themselves. It was absolutely damning, exposing her true contempt for us. The auditorium erupted. The 8th graders were cheering, laughing, and some were even applauding. Even some of the teachers in the back looked shocked and a little disgusted. Mrs. Albright, utterly humiliated, disconnected her laptop from the projector, her hands shaking. Her face was crimson, her eyes wide with a mixture of fury and despair. She mumbled something about a technical malfunction and stormed off the stage, practically running out of the auditorium. The aftermath was glorious chaos. Principal Henderson, bewildered by the whole spectacle, was left to try and restore order. The email, though only briefly displayed, had been seen by enough students and teachers to cause a massive stir. Word spread like wildfire through the school. Everyone knew. Mrs. Albright's true feelings were out in the open. The next day, there was an emergency staff meeting. Liam and I kept our heads down, feigning innocence, even as we exchanged triumphant glances. We heard rumors that Mrs. Albright was furious, demanding an investigation, accusing those video game addicts of sabotage. But without any direct evidence, and with the clear display of her own highly unprofessional email, her complaints fell on deaf ears. Within a week, things started to change. The school, facing pressure from parents who had heard about the incident and were now questioning Mrs. Albright's methods, quietly reversed the Roblox ban. It wasn't an official announcement, it was more of a gradual easing. Teachers started allowing phones again during breaks, and the school computers, once purged of all gaming sites, slowly had their filters relaxed. Mrs. Albright's classes, however, were a disaster. Her authority was completely undermined. Students openly mocked her, and her lessons became even more ineffective. Her colleagues gave her a wide berth, clearly uncomfortable with her exposed sentiments. By the end of the semester, Mrs. Albright was gone. The official reason given was personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. She had been humiliated, exposed, and ultimately, defeated by the very students she had tried to control. The school slowly returned to its former self, with the happy sounds of Roblox, oof sounds and triumphant game music once again filling the hallways during breaks. We got our Roblox back, and more importantly we learned that sometimes standing up to injustice, even in a sneaky and unconventional way, can make a real difference. So that's my story. It was a messy, risky, and incredibly satisfying experience. I don't regret it for a second. Sometimes, you have to fight for the things that bring you joy, especially when someone tries to take them away for all the wrong reasons. Like this video if you were on my side in this whole crazy ordeal. Subscribe for more stories like this, where the kids fight back against the establishment. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Do you think we went too far, or was it justified? I'll see you all in the next story.